Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is one back. Walk the ball.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno, here to discuss the 2024 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. In case you forgot, Matt, happy Sunday to you. How you holding up over there?
I'm good. I think we could get into how my Saturday was really quick, but before we do that, I don't want to bury the lead. I know it was your birthday. So belated again, happy birthday to you, and I'm sure the chat will wish you some birthday wishes as well and some nice messages. Any quick how did you celebrate before we get into tonight?
Honestly, nothing crazy. I hung out with some friends a couple nights before. We're distanced from Thanksgiving, which was great. I went to a restaurant that I really love, got takeout, that I think we've talked about on this show, that is not necessarily universally beloved, but I love California Pizza Kitchen. We had a gift card, so we picked up a barbecue chicken pizza, a barbecue chicken chopped salad, and split that with my wife, which was fantastic. So that was my day. My Ducks, #1 in the nation, by the way, in case anybody was wondering. They were off yesterday. So go ahead, Matt. I'll let you discuss USC and UCLA, which I'm assuming is the topic of conversation here.
I mean, I was going to go with Dave Roberts being celebrated on Saturday, but since you brought it up, we can certainly discuss USC beating UCLA. I think everybody sort of expected that would be the case. The game, it was stress-free for the most part. It was fun being at the Rose Bowl. I mean, I've shared it. Like, my wife is a UCLA fan. I'm an SC fan, so it's always a fun little game. And fortunately, I take it, I think, a little bit, I definitely take it harder than she does. And so it's always better when, for me, and maybe us, when SC wins, even though she comes away a little bit frustrated. But yeah, it was in all seriousness, it was a fun game. But really, like, Dave Roberts was recognized there, and we have that video up on our YouTube channel. So if you're here, stick around after and check that out. They played a nice little World Series highlight reel for him, and then they presented him with a custom jersey and stuff like that. So that was nice. And actually, I jumped ahead. I forgot to bring up the biggest news is I finally got to try Lucky Boy out in Pasadena. I don't know if you've been there.
I have not, but Daniel hyped it up, and I know you said that the bar had been set high.
And it met the bar. It was very good. If it's not the best breakfast burrito I've had, it's the second best. So it was very good. My only complaints were their salsa wasn't great. I think Tam's where I prefer to get my breakfast burritos from, because it's a lot more local. Has better salsa and ranch, but strictly like breakfast burrito ingredients, very good.
Okay, well, to walk me through, I mean, breakfast burrito, I would argue, is my favorite food in the world. So what do we got? What do we got working here?
So it was hash browns, egg, cheese, and bacon, and then the salsa, like, added on, like, poured the salsa on the side. With, like I said, that I didn't end up using too much of that just because I didn't care for it.
Okay. I love it. Well, congratulations. Congrats to USC getting to above 500 this season. Did Lincoln Riley, do we give him the contract extension yet, or do we have to wait a little while?
I think maybe they'll wait, because if they had lost that game without scoring a touchdown, I was on the team of fire him in the locker room at that point, because it was embarrassing. But yes, he got the win. Maybe if they beat Notre Dame, then the contract extension can come. Maybe him and Dave Roberts will sign theirs on the same day.
There you go. By the way, I see some people in the chat doing some math. As I mentioned, I was born right after the 1988 World Series, as you can tell, not by much. So 36 years old, how old I turned. And you wished me happy birthday on Twitter. I mentioned that there was a stretch where November 23rd was the birthday day of all days for the Dodgers, because at one point, Justin Turner was celebrating his birthday as a Dodger. Ross Stripling was celebrating his birthday as a Dodger. And the one guy left, Gavin Lux, also a November 23rd birthday. So we've got some good company there. And by the way, for Gavin Lux, congratulations. A little bit of news and notes on him. Gavin Lux Day in Kenosha, his hometown. So the good vibes continue to roll for Gavin Lux, Matt.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing for him. You know, it's nice to see like such a young player get this type of recognition is fun, and it's good for him. You know, coming from Kenosha, obviously not a huge city by any means, and so he's certainly somebody that deserves to be celebrated. Now is two-time World Series champion, right? Yeah. He was in the organization for 2020. He was, I forget if he was active for that. He
played in the regular season, but didn't play in the was never active for the postseason. I feel like I'll double check that.
Yeah, I forgot. I felt like maybe he might have been on like the NLDS or the NLCS roster, but yeah, I mean, as you're looking that up, regardless, he's been around for a while, and obviously, coming off his ACL tear last
One
year.
plate appearance in the 2020 postseason, by the way. So one game, one plate appearance. He was 0 for 1 with a strikeout.
Yeah. So, two-time World Series champion.
Two-time World Series champ.
Going to take it away from him. So yeah, it's nice to see him, get that sort of recognition. And they there's some outlets out there have a video of the ceremony and stuff, and you could see like he was appreciative of what they did for him.
I love it. I love it. Some other news and notes. We have to take a small victory lap because if you watched our show 2 weeks ago, we would have told you that Chris Woodward was going to be the first base coach. That was our guess. I was like, hey, this guy's in the organization. He used to be a base coach. I think you were like, I don't know, that he probably has a pretty good gig just hanging out at home and maybe not traveling all the time. But Chris Woodward named first base coach for the Dodgers back in an on-field role. Not especially surprising, I wouldn't say, but has been made official there. And the other bit of news, which is more of a sad bit of news, was Brent Honeywell was DFA'd along with a guy that many people have never heard of before. Honeywell, in a move that brought back a couple guys, Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin, when they were officially signed. Honeywell was DFA'd. This is the second time he's been DFA'd for the Dodgers. The first time was back in August. He returned to the Dodgers, thankfully, and was able to stick around throughout the postseason once he was called back up. But I wouldn't say this is a surprising move to me, Matt, just because I had looked at the 40-man and the numbers and he had no options. But this is a guy that I think will be fondly remembered in Los Angeles. And who knows? I mean, he might make his way back at some point. Maybe it's on a minor league deal. We'll see. But again, he will be fondly remembered despite maybe not being like a quote-unquote star player necessarily.
Yeah, I think the only aspect that surprised me was the timing of it, because they could have done... They didn't end up adding that many prospects to the 40-man to protect them from the Rule 5. So, if they had wanted to add 4 or 5 guys, maybe even 3, and DFA'd Honeywell at that point, I would have understood that. Right now, it seemed like a little curious because there's not necessarily, at least I don't think, like there's not a bunch of signings or multiplayer trades on the horizon. And so to do it now was a little bit of a shock. But the counter to that could be, hey, like, I'm sure the Dodgers would welcome him back on a minor league deal. I'm sure Honeywell has some interest in that, but also if he could go and get a major league contract from a team, my guess is he'll probably take that stability and value. Like it's a little bit, so it's valuable, right? Over signing a minor league deal where you're going to be shuttled up and down again. So, maybe they wanted to give him a chance earlier in the offseason rather than later to explore the market, see what might come his way. And then if it works out for the Dodgers where, he returns, then great. And if it lands, an MLB contract, then, thank him for his contributions this year. I know, as you said, it certainly will be memorable, even though he's not an all-star or superstar. And hey, even down to the World Series celebration and the Mookie Betts podcast, he was still providing highlights for fans. So yeah, I mean, tip your cap to Honeywell for what he did, certainly in the playoffs.
Yeah, I like it's going to be nice to see Honeywell at the World Series anniversary in 40 years. Is a great line. It'll be, oh yeah, Brent Honeywell. Remember that guy? Somebody else, Ederico, I believe, was asking the difference between non-tendered and DFA'd. Basically, the way Major League works is the first 7 years of your professional life, the team owns your rights. And so he was not under contract by the Dodgers, but there was at some point they either had to tender him a contract or he becomes non-tendered, which means basically released and available. A DFA is when you were already under contract, then you have to pass through waivers, and then you can elect free agency or accept an assignment down to the minor league. So it's just basically a formality. Essentially, it works out the exact same way as a DFA, but it's a difference between being under contract prior to the decision and not under contract prior to the decision.
Yeah, and I think one other thing, too, is to non-tender him at this point, which happens during the offseason. Like, you can't non-tender during the season, so it's an off-season thing. To do that and to keep Honeywell off waivers, it sort of increases the probability for the Dodgers potentially re-signing, because if he probably would have been claimed off of waivers is my guess had they DFA'd him. And so I think like that potentially helps them as well, where you just send him straight to free agency, let him go see, who he might sign with. And if not, maybe, like I said, they both parties circle back and say, okay, what can we do here?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's get into some of the bigger news. The plan for tonight, we're going to talk rumors, Teoscar Hernández, Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty. We're going to talk Tommy Edman. That'll be a big chunk of time. We'll talk Giovanny Gallegos, the guy that the Dodgers have added to their roster over the past few weeks. we will take questions. And then last, but very certainly not least, I have a list of my favorite fast food burgers that I have saved specifically for tonight because I think Matt is not going to like my rankings. I think the chat might not like my rankings. And this came up on Friday night. I visited an establishment, had a burger, and said, I think this is it. I think this is number one on my list. But before we get there, let's start with some real baseball conversation. Let's talk rumors around Teoscar Hernández, Walker Buehler, and then Jack Flaherty. Teoscar Hernández, let's start there. John Morosi, who's going to be the source of basically all the insight that you have. This guy just was a wealth of knowledge and had some opinions, had some thoughts. And he basically said if Teoscar Hernández isn't a Dodger, he thinks Teoscar will be playing baseball in the American League East next season, depending on where Juan Soto goes. If Juan Soto goes to the Yankees and Teoscar isn't a Dodger, then he thinks Boston might be the team. And so he lists the Dodgers and the Red Sox as the two top candidates for Teoscar Hernández. This makes sense. I mean, first of all, it sounds like a lot of speculation. But second of all, obviously, the Red Sox are a team that have been connected to Juan Soto. Morosi says he doesn't think it's real. He thinks it's kind of a front. They're not actually going to spend on Juan Soto, which is how all Red Sox fans feel. But what was your reaction to hearing that the Red Sox may be a sort of a quote-unquote backup plan for Teoscar Hernández if the Dodgers don't work out?
Yeah, not surprising at all. I mean, the Red Sox tried to sign him last offseason, and I'm pretty sure they did offer him a 2-year deal. I think the hangup may have been either Teoscar wanting a 3rd year and or a larger financial commitment. And that's sort of, I guess he didn't necessarily deem it, I don't want to say worth it, but for lack of better terms, worth it. And so he ended up signing the 1-year contract with the Dodgers. And now, here we are.
Seems
so that's
like it
not
worked
too,
out for him.
Yeah, a little bit. That's not too unexpected for me. I still just, more than anything, I don't see a world where Teoscar Hernández is not on the Dodgers roster next season and at least 1 or 2 more years beyond that. Yeah. But if not, to Morosi's report in terms of the AL East being a likely landing spot, if it's not the Red Sox, if it's not the Yankees, assuming Juan Soto, even if he were to leave and go, maybe to the Mets or whatever, the Orioles, I know maybe about a week to 10 days ago were mentioned as having, some interest in Teoscar as well. So, it does look like it's either the Dodgers or the American League East one way or another for him. But again, I just don't see a world where he's not back with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the only world where he's not back is if the world where Juan Soto becomes a Dodger, which I know I'm not putting that out into the ether. I'm not trying to start that conversation tonight. I'm just saying that's the only world. And so if you think that's a 0% chance or a 5% chance or a 10% chance, whatever the remainder number is out of 100, I think that's the chances that Teoscar Hernández comes back to be a Dodger. It just seems like he, of all guys, we're going to talk Walker Buehler in a second. Of all guys, Teoscar Hernández, I think, really, really wants to be a Dodger next year. I think the Dodgers like him. They like having him in the clubhouse. They've seen the production that he can have, obviously personality-wise. Like everything is a fit with this guy. And so more than anybody else, it feels like he's the one who, even if he were to get an offer from Boston or Baltimore or the Yankees or whoever, would probably come running back to the Dodgers and say, here's the number, here's the years. Can we at least get close? Can we make this close? Because I want to be here. And that's why I'm confident, Matt, because and we're going to talk Buehler again, which I would say is similar in some ways and different in some others. But more than anybody else, I think Teoscar Hernández, of all the free agents, really, really wants to be a Dodger next season.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think then there's also, if you're looking at sort of that group, Flaherty, Buehler, Treinen, those guys. I mean, I guess Kershaw we can't put in this.
Kershaw,
because
okay, excuse me. Kershaw's number one on the list.
But he is, yeah, Kershaw is in his own group because that's just a matter of when it gets done rather than if he's going to be back. I think with Teoscar, to your point, he probably wants to be back the most, Kershaw excluded, and I think he's the safest bet as well in terms of you know more or less what you should be getting from him. With Walker Buehler, look, you and I we're on the Walker Buehler train, but we recognize that the regular season could still be a little uneven. You're not really sure, right? And so with Teoscar, I think it's a little bit more clear, and so that's why I feel he's just this. It's I want to say a lock, but a very safe bet that he's back with the team.
Let's talk Walker Buehler, because Morosi said, also reporting, that there was mutual interest between Walker Buehler and the New York Yankees of all teams. Here's the question that popped into my head, and I'm going to ask you, Matt. Is this real, or is this Walker Buehler's camp just trying to drum up some interest to get Andrew Friedman to make a contract offer?
A little bit of both, I think. The Yankees do need starting pitching. So I think if you're like, it's believable from the sense if you're the Yankees, you just saw what he did to you in his start and then out of the bullpen, 2 days later on just 1 day of rest. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're necessarily putting on a full court press for Buehler by any means. And it's nothing against Walker. It's just I mean, the Yankees, I don't know if they're really going to do that with anybody until they know what's happening with Soto, right? Because if sure, maybe you went into it thinking, okay, we're going to spend, 500 million, maybe 525. And if the price all of a sudden jumps up to 600 million, like you don't want to be caught, having spent money elsewhere before you figure that out. And so I feel like it's just more of, the Yankees maybe kind of kicking the tires saying, hey, we have some interest. Would you be open to coming here? And him saying yes. And that's sort of, to your point, getting on the Dodgers radar of, hey, like I do have options here.
Yeah. Where do you what's your opinion on where the relationship is between the Dodgers and Walker Buehler? Like, obviously, this is a guy who grew up in the Dodgers organization. They drafted him. They've developed him. He had some unbelievable memories here, obviously, punctuated with a 2024 World Series where he gets the final out. And yet in the middle, there's some injuries that I don't think he blames the Dodgers for any of that. But, I think it's realistic to say there were moments where it felt like in 2024, Walker Buehler and the organization were not necessarily on the same page. Now, it doesn't have to be negative, but they clearly weren't. Do you think there is any part of like there's a reason I'm putting him in a different category than Teoscar Hernández? I guess I'll ask it this way. Do you put him in a different category than Teoscar Hernández in terms of how desperate the player is to return to the organization?
I do. And I know we discussed, kind of the relationship and where it's at. I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, I forget. I think it's fine right now. I think, yes, there were some rocky points throughout the year. That being said, I think, and I'm not criticizing him by any means, but I think Buehler is a very a prideful person, and he's got, some, it could probably be described as arrogance. Again, I'm not like trying to be critical. Like that, that arrogance and confidence is what allowed him to pitch 100%. In out of the bullpen in Game 5. So by all means, like have it. Like it worked. And we've seen it in the past, right? Like he's come up time and time again in big moments. Yeah, Pizzani says Walker's headstrong. That's probably a nicer way of putting it. So I think because of that, he's less like if he feels maybe slighted by the Dodgers for an office in some sense, it could be like, hey, like I put myself on the line multiple times for you guys in the playoffs. And you're kind of, if there's any sort of perceived disrespect, like it could lead to, okay, I'm just going to move on here.
Yeah. And I see some people pointing out the relationship Buehler has with Clayton Kershaw could be helpful. Obviously, the relationship he has with Oral Hershiser, as evidenced by him wearing the jersey at the parade, all of that kind of thing. It seems like in all of the post-World Series interviews, the Mookie Betts conversation, you can see the kinship that he had with the guys on this roster, many of whom will be back next year. You can see just how badly he wants to be winning baseball games and winning World Series, which obviously the Dodgers will be the favorites in 2025. That's not breaking news. They will be the betting favorites. They will probably be the best team in baseball. And so I think he wants to be back with the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers want him back, but I don't think it's a Corey Seager situation where I think Corey Seager like actually kind of wanted to leave Los Angeles, or at least was like the Dodgers weren't even a tick above any other organization when it came to free agency. I don't think Buehler is there, but I don't think it's like he's going to be running back to the Dodgers with every offer he gets. To your point, if the first offer made to him is a disrespectful one, we'll see how that plays out. We don't know the full story on the qualifying offer, if that was something that they did out of respect for him, or if that's something that he felt like maybe he deserved. In many ways, he should be happy he didn't get it because it will mean his market is more robust. But I'll be curious to see how things play out with Walker Buehler. Obviously, as you said, you and I both deeply, deeply desiring to see Walker Buehler as a Dodger next year and well beyond, of course. Let's talk about one other person here, and he's under the rumors category with Jack Flaherty, but there's actually not a ton of rumors about Jack Flaherty, at least not connected to the Dodgers. And the question I wanted to ask you is one that we've been getting a lot. We had a video that went up with Daniel and I talking about the top starting pitchers on the market, not named Roki Sasaki. That would be Blake Snell, Corbin Burns, and Max Fried. And we had people asking us, well, why isn't Jack Flaherty part of this conversation? Why aren't there Dodger fans clamoring for Jack Flaherty to return to Los Angeles? And so I'll propose to you, Matt, does Jack Flaherty belong in that conversation, near that conversation? Like, where are you at with the Dodgers re-signing potentially Jack Flaherty?
In a world where they get one of Snell, Burns, Fried, Sasaki.
Yeah.
If Flaherty is your second or third pitcher added this offseason, okay. If you get one of the top guys, if it's the Dodgers for whatever reason miss out on those guys and it's Flaherty and Buehler that are back, I have some questions about the rotation just getting through next season. And it's not necessarily a complete indictment on both of those guys. You and I just got done, saying we hope Walker Buehler is back with the Dodgers. We've expressed that time and time again. But Flaherty is, in my opinion, a tier below the guys you just named. And I have felt that way going back to the trade deadline. He was the best starting pitcher moved, but that's also somewhat indicative of the market. Like if Garrett Crochet got traded, not to the Dodgers, then everybody would have said he was the best starter move, right? Like no questions asked.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, on one hand, the Dodgers acquired the best starting pitcher who ended up being traded. But I mean, our staff, I'll peel the curtain back a little bit for everybody who's watching and maybe listening to this after the fact on podcasts. Like we discussed it a lot on our staff. And I said, hey, like, I think Flaherty can help, but I'm not really sure if he's sort of the ace that I thought they kind of needed because of the injuries that were happening at the time. And, looking out down the line and, who was going to potentially be available or not be available. And I remember telling you guys, like, to me, his like ceiling is probably a very good number 3.
Yeah.
He could occasionally pass as a number 2, perhaps. And we saw like the inconsistency in the postseason is what, I think Scott and Blake were discussing contracts and stuff like that. And I just didn't get like the money that they were saying he could probably command. Like I didn't see it. And I still don't. And I think Flaherty, look, maybe if he were to spend a full season with the Dodgers, not that they magically fix everybody, but they obviously have a reputation for helping pitchers, unlock some things, make some adjustments here and there. Like maybe that would benefit him. But what we saw, like, I don't know if you can say that he's in, the top tier of starting pitchers. And I don't think it's necessarily like a full like criticism or anything of him. Like,
yeah,
they're superstars and they're not, right? Like it's just how sports are.
Yeah, I with Flaherty, like looking at MLB trade rumors, for example, they rank the top free agents every season. Max Fried is 6th, Jack Flaherty is 8th, Sean Manaea is 10th. I think Jack Flaherty is a lot closer to Sean Manaea than he is to Max Fried when it comes to free agency. Now, they also have Flaherty projected to earn 5 years and $115 million. And if that contract is out there, more power to you. Jack Flaherty, local kid, wins the World Series, contributed in meaningful ways. But like I pulled some numbers. So last season as a Dodger, just out of curiosity, what would you guess his ERA was in the 10 starts, 55 and a third innings he had as a Dodger?
It's either going to be just under 3 or just over 3. I'll
3.6.
Okay, I was going to say just over.
3.6, a 4.16 FIP, which I know means nothing to you, but that's not great.
No, I have adopted that one. I'm okay. I'm okay with FIP. FIP I've caught up to. We're okay.
Wow. There we go. Yeah. Weighted runs created plus is next for you. His strikeout rate as a Dodger, though, was down 1.3. His walk rate nearly doubled to 3.1. His fastball velocity was down. Obviously, when at the deadline, there were rumors of a back injury, which is why the Yankees had backed out of a deal with him. No pun intended there. How about this? His 3.2 wins above replacement last year was the highest he had since 2019. In 2023, he was a 1.8 wins above replacement player. 2022, 0.9 in 2021. There's a reason this guy signed a 1-year, $14 million prove-it deal a year ago, and he proved it. More power to him. But again, I want to emphasize what you said at the beginning. Like, I think we can get into a world where saying Corbin Burns is better than Jack Flaherty can be perceived as a disrespectful comment towards Jack Flaherty. He's just not in the same category as those guys. He's going to get paid a lot of money. He was helpful to the Dodgers. He got them big innings. Even the regular season, just making every start, basically, when his turn came around, 10 starts was necessary to get them to where they're going. But all that's to say, if I'm the Dodgers, I think they have enough guys in the quote-unquote Jack Flaherty tier of their roster already that unless you are adding guys that are better than the dudes you already have on the roster, I don't think it's necessarily worth your time unless it's a guy like Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, guys who we're already expecting and hoping will come back. So that would be my argument. Is it's not, hey, Jack Flaherty stinks, he's terrible, he's not worth it. It's just, if I'm the Dodgers, I would much rather make sure I've got enough runway to see what I've got in guys like Dustin May or Tony Gonsolin, or, insert prospect guy that's coming up through the system, not to mention Yamamoto and Glasnow, who I think are better than Jack Flaherty when everybody's healthy.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is the postseason. And that's what the Dodgers are playing for at this point. Like, yes, they need the depth, they need bodies to get through a season. We all understand that. But ultimately, the playoffs are what matters most to this team. And I think to the fans as well. And fair or not, look, Flaherty had his moments in the playoffs this year. He also had some.
He had two. He basically, in 5 starts, he had 2 good ones.
Right. That's a tough, to say, and it could be a blip. It could have just been, look, the great ones, the Hall of Famers have been lit up in the playoffs, right? It does happen. But unfortunately, I think from the business standpoint, when you're Jack Flaherty specifically, you've dealt with some injuries in your career. You've dealt with a little bit of inconsistency, in my opinion, in your career. When you have these sort of struggles during a free agent year, it's a business. And I think that stuff can sort of get held against you. Now, if it was the first time this stuff had sort of happened and he had been, a perennial all-star the first 5 years of his career, it's a different conversation, right? You say, okay, he just struggled a couple times. Maybe, he was under the weather for one of those starts, maybe even 2 of them. Things happen. But I think, you add that all up, his situation specifically, and it's tough to, in my opinion, to sit there and say, put him in this upper echelon of pitchers. Now, I will say, because of Max Fried's injury history as well, Flaherty and Fried are probably closer than maybe most people. I know you alluded to this, but I think they're closest, right? If you want to put
I'm not
Flaherty,
super high on Fried. Yeah.
But if Fried was, and of course this is if Fried was healthy and didn't have his injury history, he would be clearly set. He would arguably be leading, maybe the conversation with Burns and Snell at this point.
Yeah.
But, that's not the reality we live in, of course. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think the biggest thing I know you and I want to sort of drive home is Jack Flaherty certainly has value. He is a good pitcher. But with the way the Dodgers, and you mentioned it, are sort of constructed, who's coming back, who's still out there, he's not in that upper tier of starting pitchers.
And I want to be clear, I mentioned guys like Gonsolin and May. Jack Flaherty at this point right now today is a better pitcher than Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May. The difference is Jack Flaherty would require a $23 million a year investment for the next 5 years. And Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin just signed for a combined $6 million because of the way that contracts work for young guys. So I'm not comparing those guys as apples to apples. I'm just saying, if you already have those 2 guys for $6 million, I'm not necessarily interested in offering 115. I joked with you that Flaherty was going to get Tyler Glasnow money over the last month of the season. That's what he's projected to be making this offseason. And you called me crazy at first. I had one moment where I felt somewhat vindicated, and now I think it's crazy. And yet he's probably going to get it. It's just not going to be with the Dodgers. So again, thank you for your service, Jack Flaherty. You helped win a World Series. I know how much that moment meant to him. And so kudos to you. We did have a question, by the way. Shelly asked, what is FIP? Fielding independent pitching. It's basically a metric similar to expected ERA, xERA. Both of those are basically predictive metrics. So they're looking at batted ball profile, swing and miss rate, strikeout rate, walk rate, that kind of thing. And basically saying, if you tried to eliminate luck, how would this pitcher's ERA look, essentially? So instead of having to deal with oh man, this guy, for whatever reason, gave up a home run twice as often as this other guy, even though they gave up the same number of fly balls, or this guy got the same number of ground balls, but somehow 25 extra found their way through the hole. It's basically meant to, and it's not perfect, but it's meant to be predictive. It's meant to help level the playing field and say, man, this guy's ERA was really good, but actually he just got lucky, or vice versa. So again, for Jack Flaherty, when I say he had a 4.16 FIP in his time with the Dodgers and a 3.6 ERA, it's essentially saying he was good, average to good as a pitcher, and that's probably what he deserved as far as results as well. So let's move on to one of the other big rumors, and the one that I want to spend a little bit of extra time here. Again, from John Morosi, talking about Tommy Edman and the Dodgers. He says, quote, hearing the Dodgers have had preliminary dialogue with Tommy Edman's camp about a contract extension. Now, I've got an exercise I want to work through here in just a second, Matt, but give me just your quick, immediate gut reaction to Dodgers discussing an extension with Tommy Edman. Is it positive? Is it neutral? Or is it not interested?
Yeah, it's positive. I mean, I think that like his sample size is relatively small, and there may be some concerns there. I think, the switch hitting stuff, maybe that's something that gets ironed out if the Dodgers were to sign him long term. Do they sit him down and say, hey, let's decide? I forget, is it the right side that he hits better from?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot.
Sorry. Okay, so I always get it mixed up. But somebody, whatever side it is, like, do they approach him and say, hey, like, let's keep you hitting right-handed for the time being? I would imagine that if they're discussing this type of a contract extension with Edman, that it's probably going to be not completely not like Atlanta Braves team friendly, where they sign guys for almost 50% below market value, it seems. But I'm inclined to believe that it would be relatively favorable towards the team. And so if that is the case, then I think it certainly could make sense. And his versatility and where he could play is notable in this. And we've talked about, how that is going to impact potentially how the Dodgers go about this offseason. And so,
yeah,
I think it's a positive.
Versus lefties as a righty was the answer that we got. Thank you for that. I got so confused because I remember watching Mookie's. They were joking about how he was switching back left and right, and it was against Canely and because the changeup anyways. But I think you say positive. I see most people in the chat, extend this man, extend this man, extend this man. I want to be clear that I am pro Tommy Edman. I am a fan of what he brings to the Dodgers. I'm a fan of the way he plays the game. We had the Athletic reporter from St. Louis come on before he ever played a game, and she said, hey, everybody's going to love this guy, that kind of thing. But I do want to play a quick little game of mystery resume here with you, Matt. We've got our classic player A and player B. One of these two is Tommy Edman. The other is not. This is a 3-year sample size. So this is 2022 through 2024. And player A and player B. So player A, 255 batting average, 314 on base, 402 slug. Player B, basically 250 batting average, 336 on base, 385 slug. So basically we're working out, it's like the exact same OPS here. Higher on base percentage for player B, higher slug for player A. Weighted runs created plus, I joked about this one, 100 is league average. So over the last 3 years, player A is a 99, slightly below league average. Player B, 106, slightly above. That's taking into account average, power, everything. Home runs over the stretch, 32 for player A, 39 for player B. Stolen bases, 65 for player A, 72 for player B. Walk rate, 7% for player A, 11% for player B. Strikeout rate, 17 and change, basically the exact same. Fielding run value, player A is worth 23 runs. Basically, this is Baseball Savant's metrics, all-inclusive metric. No defensive metric is perfect, but it's the one I choose. Fielding run value for player A was 23, and for player B, it was 14. I'm curious, Matt, and I'm putting you on the spot here, so I apologize. Do you have a guess at which one of these Tommy Edman is and which one he is not?
Yeah, so I was thinking that he was A, but I'm not sure if his fielding run value will be that high, even though I know Scott and Blake were telling us how good he is defensively. Man, this is tough. I'll stick with A.
Okay, so A is Tommy Edman. Do you have any guess at who player B is?
I mean, only because I've seen it in the people are guessing Outman, maybe Kike.
He's this
Lux.
Not Lux. The Lux is a great guess though. I do have some Lux numbers here in a second. Player B is currently a free agent. If that's the last hint I'll give you.
Is it Ha-Seong Kim?
Ha-Seong Kim is player B. Somebody in the chat guessed it. I did not know when I started this exercise. I was like, Ha-Seong Kim, who is, a very good defensive player, has played shortstop, has positional versatility as well. I was shocked when I looked at these numbers, Matt, because if I asked a random Dodgers fan how they felt about Ha-Seong Kim as a signing versus how they feel about extending Tommy Edman, you could not have a bigger gap in expectations and all that. And yet, offensively, Ha-Seong Kim's a better player. he's an above average league average player, and a worse defensive player. And again, defensive metric, like Ha-Seong Kim's a good defensive player, whether or not he's great, whether or not Tommy Edman, etc. It is worth pointing out Ha-Seong Kim is 4+ years younger than Tommy Edman. Ha-Seong Kim's projected to sign, according to MLB Trade Rumors, a 3-year deal for $8 million a year. So I'm curious, Matt, knowing now that player A is Tommy Edman, player B is Ha-Seong Kim, how does that make you feel? Give me your reaction to seeing these two guys right next to each other.
I mean, honestly, they're basically the same player. Like this is 3 years. Like the slash line is
Basically
relatively
identical.
relatively identical. The weighted runs created plus, like that's if Tommy Edman had a 100 weighted runs created plus, maybe it would present a little bit better, right? Because at that point he's been exactly league average, and Kim has been slightly better. The home runs, like a 7 homer difference over a 3-year span.
And Tommy Edman missed some time. So the reason I put weighted runs created plus is because that doesn't account, like that doesn't get higher with more games played. Slash line, the same thing. So home runs and stolen bases, it's worth pointing out that Tommy Edman missed half of 3/4 of this past season. So he is a little bit of a disadvantage there.
Yeah. I've never been the high man on Ha-Seong Kim. So like I would say just re-sign Edman at that point. And also, especially right now with Kim coming off his shoulder surgery, like and I'm pretty sure it was his left shoulder, which is the lead one for a right-handed hitter. Like that's always dangerous when it's your front. It's one of the reasons why the Dodgers are a little bit more optimistic with Ohtani, is because it's his back shoulder as a hitter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, I don't need any, I don't know if somebody were to look at this and say, hey, we want this, the 7 more home run difference with Ha-Seong Kim, that wouldn't be me.
Yeah. So I want to be clear. None of what I just said changes my opinion of wanting Tommy Edman signed. I think there are a lot of other factors that play into it. I just think sometimes we can get so focused on the guys that are in front of us, the guys that we have seen play for the Dodgers, and it helps to get put in perspective. It's the same conversation when we were talking about Walker Buehler and whether he was going to get the qualifying offer. I felt like I was getting crap for saying no. And I was like, guys, starting pitchers of Walker Buehler's caliber that put up the numbers that he put up don't get AAVs as high as the qualifying offer. And so I don't say this to say they shouldn't re-sign Tommy Edman. It's more so the numbers that maybe he's going to expect are going to be lower. If Ha-Seong Kim, who to your point, yes, is coming off of shoulder surgery, which is a big deal. Other people think, go ahead.
I think it was his right. Yeah, it's his right shoulder. So it's his throwing shoulder. So I apologize for that. So I guess not his hitting shoulder, but it's still his labrum stuff. And again, I've never been particularly high on Ha-Seong Kim anyway.
Yeah. To me, the point, and I see somebody saying TQT, Kim is a younger version of Miguel Rojas, a little less defense, but slightly better offense. With all due respect to Miguel Rojas, a lot better offense. Miguel Rojas is like not a good offensive player prior to last season. But I just think it's interesting because we have this picture of Tommy Edman in our head, Matt, which is a great one because of what he did in the postseason. In the postseason, he had a 139 weighted runs created plus, hit 328, slugged 508, was fantastic. Obviously, NLCS MVP, as people in the chat have pointed out, he plays center field fantastically, as well as playing shortstop fantastically. But I guess to me, I was just surprised at the offensive profile of Tommy Edman. He has had, in the last 5 years, Tommy Edman has had only one where his weighted runs created plus was over 100. So he's only been an above average offensive player graded out one time in the last 5 years. He doesn't strike out a ton. He doesn't swing and miss. High end speed. He's averaged basically 30 steals a year prior to this past season. But on the flip side, like his exit velocity, expected slugging rate, barrel rate, walk rate, hard hit rate, none of those have ever been in the top 50%. So he's been below average in every one of those categories. And again, I want to be so clear. I am very pro re-signing Tommy Edman. I just present this as it's interesting to me because the picture I have of NLCS MVP Tommy Edman, if that's what I'm expecting from Tommy Edman every single season of a potential extension, reminder, he's signed for next year already, so they don't need to do anything. I just think it's a little bit different. The guy that we might get in the regular season next year is unlikely to be the guy we saw in the postseason.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Look, when they traded for Tom, like I think Scott probably was amongst our staff was the most excited, saying Edman is going to make a huge difference, this and that. And I wasn't sure. I thought, okay, like at the the bench has been pretty bad, had been pretty bad this season, so I couldn't imagine it getting any worse. I personally would not expect, as you said, what Edman did in the playoffs for that to be sustained over a full season. Like, we just haven't seen that from him yet. But I think as, a role player, whether it's shortstop or center field, I like him, I think, in center field more so than shortstop. I think would be fine. And
yeah.
It'll
be interesting. Like, my gut is, after going through all this, if it gets announced that he signs beyond this year, 3 years for $36 million, something like $12 million a year, does that feel too rich? Does that feel too light? What do you think?
I mean, maybe that would be a little higher than what I would have predicted, but it's not like, oh my gosh, like, what are they doing signing him to that type of contract?
Yeah. And look, he's under contract for 1 more year. I think the thing to consider is, I believe he's 30 years old. Tommy Edman is. He's like 30 and a half years old. So when you're talking about a guy, it's like similar to the Trey Turner conversation, in the sense that when you're talking about a guy who relies on speed and athleticism, that's less likely to continue into your mid 30s compared to a guy who's maybe a bat to ball, like, power type of a guy. And so I hope they re-sign him. I'm excited by this. Again, I just think it's an interesting exercise to put Tommy Edman next to a guy like Ha-Seong Kim. And maybe it's just to say people should be higher on Ha-Seong Kim, not lower on Tommy Edman, but just higher on Ha-Seong Kim. I don't know, but I do think the shoulder surgery that you point out is interesting. It is worth pointing out, I should say. So any other notes on Tommy Edman before we move on to Gallegos here?
No, other than I wouldn't be fully shocked if an extension just doesn't get done. Like, I think this could have easily been something like the Dodgers reach out and say, hey, what would this look like? And his camp comes back with, understandably so, probably some slightly inflated numbers. And the Dodgers say, well, no, we're not there right now. That's not something we want to do. And they just play out the 2025 season and see how things go from there.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I see Dan. Why do you hate my boy Tommy? I want to be clear that, again, I interviewed the beat reporter for the St. Louis Cardinals who came on this show and told me how much we were all going to love Tommy Edman. And I was telling people while we were waiting, don't worry. This lady says, she says it's going to be awesome. Katie Woo, people are going to love him. He's going to play baseball the right way. And of course he performed. So I know how this is going to be perceived. This isn't an anti-Tommy Edman deal. It's just interesting. It's interesting. I'm just presenting without comment, playing a little devil's advocate here is all I got to say. Okay, let's talk about the signing the Dodgers have made before we get to some questions and some other topics. Giovanny Gallegos signed to a minor league deal. This, according to Steve Adams of MLB Trade Rumors. Includes an invite to spring training. If Gallegos were to make the team, the contract would have a base salary of $2.5 million with another $1.5 million available via incentives. He also has 3 opt-out dates. So if he does not make the roster out of spring training, I imagine there's an opt-out date around opening day or a few weeks after opening day, that kind of thing. So he can get out of the minor league deal at a few different points. Gallegos is a fascinating study, Matt. And I joked with you before coming on, there's going to be a ton of minor league contracts with an invite to spring training. At least this one's more exciting than most because guess what? We've heard of this guy before. If you're not familiar with Giovanny Gallegos, he's a relief pitcher, primarily with the St. Louis Cardinals. And back in 2021, 2022, he was fantastic. 3.02 ERA in 2021, over 80 innings pitched, a 3.08 expected ERA. The next year, 3.05 ERA, 2.92 expected ERA, 59 innings. I mean, we're talking about a 2-year stretch where he was one of the better relief pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. And then things fell apart in 2023 and 2024. 4.4 ERA, over 55 innings pitched. The velocity comes down a mile an hour. The strikeout rate comes down. And then 2024, far worse, 6.5 ERA, over 20 2/3. He misses 6 weeks with a shoulder injury, gets DFA'd, signs a minor league deal with the Twins, and never makes it to the major leagues. The velocity last year was down another 1.5 miles, strikeout rate down another 0.5 point as well. Some other interesting notes. In 2021, his four-seamer got a swing and miss 25.2% of the time. In 2024, it was down to 6.9%. Hard hit rate on that pitch goes from 46% to 60%, and the chase rate went from 24% to 13% for a guy that, by the way, just turned 33. So expectations should be measured, I would say. But this is a guy, Matt, that's interesting because we've seen him do it. We've seen him be one of the better pitchers in baseball. And you know what? We've seen the Dodgers take guys that sound a lot like the profile I just mentioned and turn them into valuable pieces.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I expected the Dodgers to sign him during the season when he was DFA'd and released, and I know at the time they were reported as having interest, and so I thought, okay, like he'll end up. This is a prototypical Dodgers, Andrew Friedman signing. I think Daniel said it uh, once it was reported that now Gallegos has signed with them. Uh, yeah, I think we should also add that I did see that he's making. I think he made an adjustment to like his mechanics in the lower half and has added some velocity back to his fastball this offseason. So that's certainly an encouraging step in the right direction. I don't think the Dodgers have any real trouble with getting their pitchers to throw harder. That unfortunately may have contributed to other issues, but hey, that's a different conversation for another time. But yeah, I think this makes sense. And I told you, Daniel Hudson retired. Joe Kelly's a free agent. Like there's some veteran presence in the bullpen that needs to be fulfilled. And maybe it's Gallegos. And look, if not, it's a minor league deal. And if he chooses to opt out whenever his dates allow him to, then, you just kind of say, okay, well, it didn't work out here. Good luck elsewhere.
Yeah. It's fair enough. And I mean, look, it could be Alex Reyes 2.0, who is a guy who came over with basically the same profile and he was injured, hadn't pitched in a year. And guess what? Never amounted to anything. So it could go that direction. Or to your point, this could be a Daniel Hudson type signing where all of a sudden it's a guy who refines something that had been missing for an extended period of time. So again, Giovanny Gallegos signs with the Dodgers. We got a super chat here, Matt. Then let's get to some questions as we close out the show tonight. Thank you to everybody joining us live on Sunday night, over 2,300 people. We greatly appreciate it. I see some people in the chat who are new. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. If you are new, go ahead, subscribe, click the notification bell. We would love to have you be with us. We are live every Sunday night, every Tuesday night, and every Thursday night right here on this channel, as well as fresh content coming throughout the week. We've got an interview coming up this week with a beat reporter for the team. I always hesitate to announce it because we've had some of these fall through at the last minute, but it's a guy we've had on before who I'm hopeful will give us some good information on the Dodgers free agency plan. So you don't want to miss those types of videos right here. We got a couple super chats. Let's get to them. Tim G that says, Sasaki aside, will the Dodgers have most of their big offseason moves done by New Year's? Matt, what do you think? By New Year's, December 31st, 9:01 p.m. West Coast, midnight East Coast, will the Dodgers have done most of their work?
I think so. Because I think Soto signs. Buster only reported that teams are going to start making offers this week, and so that should accelerate things. So if Soto doesn't sign this week, maybe it's which actually there's the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, so I don't imagine he'll be doing it maybe before December 1st, but it could be at the winter meetings. That would then leave a month more or less for the Dodgers, and I think once Soto's off the board, then Teoscar Hernández, that finally gets done. If Tim, I think, was in here earlier with us. So that could, he knows that we were discussing Teoscar Hernández, and I think that's the more likely scenario.
Yeah, it depends on, like, I think a guy like Blake Snell, who a number of people on our show think the Dodgers might have real interest in. He's a guy who I imagine is going to be motivated to sign quickly, with news that Sasaki's not going to be signing till after January 15th. I think some of those guys could start to come off the market. And again, Snell was kind of left holding the bag. And not the size bag he was hoping a year ago. So I could see him being motivated to sign more quickly. So I'll agree with you. By the end of December, after the winter meetings, all that, I think most of the work ends up getting done. Another super chat here from Zip Code Zero. Who is the 2025 Dodgers starting rotation for each of you? 6-man rotation. He says Yamamoto, Glasnow, Buehler, one of Fried, Snell, Burns, Ohtani, Gonsolin, Kershaw. I think that's 7, but kudos to you, Zip Code Zero. Yamamoto, Glasnow, Kershaw, Ohtani. Those 4 feel like, I don't think we're talking opening day here, Matt. Let's say on May 1st. May 1st. Who's your 6-man rotation? So Ohtani's got a month and a half after opening day to kind of get himself dialed in. Yamamoto, Glasnow, Kershaw, Ohtani. I think those 4 are safe bets. Who do you have besides?
I don't think Kershaw will be ready yet.
Fair. Okay, touche. Because he said he's shooting. Okay, so Yamamoto, Glasnow, Ohtani. Give me your other 3.
Gonsolin.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So he's got Buehler here.
Yeah, I'll go Buehler.
Okay, so that's 5.
5. And I think Sasaki.
Okay, I love it. So I would say Dustin May, I think, is going to be in this mix. I think he's going to be ready. Esophagus surgery. Sounded like the arm was going to be fine. I know he probably had to limit some throwing, but I think Dustin May is going to be in this conversation. So give me Yamamoto, give me Glasnow, give me Ohtani, give me Dustin May 4, Blake Snell 5, and Walker Buehler 6. I'll go with those 6, and then Gonsolin hovering in the wings, waiting as in the number 7 spot. Jonathan says, who's most likely to get traded off the 40-man? We have 4 catchers, excluding rushing, many mid outfielders and starting pitchers, excluding Danny Duffy. His ongoing joke here. Roster is clogged. Most likely to get traded off the 40-man. I mean, he mentions the catchers. I love this guy. They got to trade Hunter Vidusha, right? Like at some point, this guy can't just keep sticking around. I just feel bad for him. I think he could be playing in the major leagues, but that said, and I guess Diego Cartaya would be the other one, but I just feel like he's more likely to stick around because there's a world where his bat figures some things out in AAA this year, and there's actually value in trading him again. So I guess I would go Vidusha as most likely to get traded.
I'm not going to necessarily go. Well, okay. I think the 3 most likely. I don't know of the 3 which is first. So not necessarily particularly ranked are Chris Taylor, Gavin Lux, and Cartaya.
Chris Taylor.
Yeah.
Okay. Gavin Lux. That one's not surprising. I mean, like in the sense of, I think that people would agree. And you have Cartaya 3rd on that list.
I mean, not necessarily in order, but he is in the 3 that I could see are the most likely to be moved, or at least Dodgers will try to.
I would be curious, and I like this guy a lot, but I wonder if James Outman, depending on what they do at shortstop, I think Outman would be another guy, just in the sense of he probably has some value to some other teams. And if the Dodgers feel like that ship has passed or the offensive stuff isn't going to figure itself out, then he could be a guy that gets moved as well. So I think your instinct there, Jonathan, of a catcher, one of the catchers, not named Dalton Rushing or Will Smith or Austin Barnes, probably likely to get traded, and then maybe a guy like James Outman. Richard says, enough with the offseason talk. Time to get serious. Tommy's chili cheese fries or the Hat's chili cheese fries? Who's the winner, Matt?
Oh, man, this is tough. I like the chili from Tommy's better, but the Hat gets big brownie points for the portion that they give you. So, man, I don't want to have to pick, but I'll do Tommy's, especially if it's the actual, like the original one in LA.
Okay. I have been to the Hat. It's been a long time, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I can give you an opinion on their chili cheese fries. However, Tommy's wins. I don't think I need to taste it. Tommy's is the GOAT. Chili cheese, anything. Chili cheese burger, chili cheese fries, chili cheese dog. Tommy's, period. End of story. But I do love the Hat. Well, I guess we don't have to get naming names. There's somebody who's not a big fan of the Hat on our team, right? Am I right about that?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm not recalling if that did come up.
Okay. Well, we'll let it go. Zip code 0. I wish Michael Busch was given a shot in the outfield. Is Dalton Rushing on the 40-man this year as an outfielder, not being traded? Get rid of Chris Taylor. Yes, I think he's on the 40-man as an outfielder. I think he's going to be playing corner outfield for the Dodgers at some point in 2025.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And yeah, I mean, look, for all this stuff about Michael Busch, that's like the ultimate everybody's happy trade, because Michael Busch got to go to Chicago. He had a decent season. My Cubs fans love friends like Michael Busch, even though he kind of slumped off towards the second half of the season. But if you have not heard about the 2 guys the Dodgers got in that trade, Jackson Ferris is arguably the top pitching prospect in the Dodgers organization, and Zaire Hope, holy smokes. If you haven't heard all the buzz about that guy, he has moved into untouchable territory for a lot of people. And Josue DePaula, if you've been following Dodgers prospects, is a guy that people are like, they whisper about Josue DePaula and what he could potentially be. There are places that like Hope more than DePaula, just to give you some context. Stockton says, why no news on Trinan? He returning, need him bad. I I have to imagine Blake Treinen's coming back next year, right, Matt?
I would think so, just because like I don't know, like given his age, I don't know if there's a team that's going to like overpay him enough to get him away from the Dodgers. And maybe I'm overvaluing this, but I've expressed it in the past of I think Treinen does appreciate how the Dodgers sort of navigated everything with his shoulder injury and subsequent surgery that he needed to have. And, the contract and time that they gave him. Yeah. So I think that he is back, and it's just a matter of, they know it'll get done. And so they'll figure it out when they do.
Yeah. I agree on all those points. Paul asks, what kind of contract does Teoscar get from the Dodgers? You said you're confident he comes back. What kind of numbers do you think we're talking about here?
Oh man, I'm terrible at this. I think it's 3 years with a player option for the 4th year. What was his salary was what, like
25 last year. I think it was a 1-year, $25 million deal.
Maybe
he turned down 1 year, 21 was the qualifying offer.
Yeah, so maybe about 90-ish, 92.
Okay. Yeah, I actually think the 25 number might be about right because of diminishing returns on the age. So 3 years in that 75 to 80 range, I think sounds about right to me.
I wonder if they approach it from 2 ways where, look, we'll give you just three years flat at higher money. But if you want 4 years, then that AAV, like if you want like the player option, then that AAV is coming down pretty significantly.
Yeah. And yeah, I think he's one of these guys that we might be over inflating what his value is. He's a very good player. $25 million is nothing to sneeze at. I just think like for his age, his defensive abilities, whole career snapshot, etc. I wonder. Yeah, I think probably 25-ish is about right. C-Raz said Treinen is re-signing for the White House visit alone. We'll just leave that one alone. Zip code 0. Last question, then I'm going to bed. Your Mount Rushmore of Dodgers. He's got Kershaw, Fernando, Vin, and Koufax. This is always a tricky question for me because I think you just have to be realistic and honest about like what kind of list you are trying to put together. If you are trying to put together like your personal favorite Mount Rushmore, that's a very different conversation. If you're putting together like your all-time, now I would say there's 2 names for every single Dodger fan that is currently alive that would have to be on there. And that would be Vin Scully and Clayton Kershaw. I think are 2 names just because of like, if you're alive now, then you saw 2 of the greatest ever to do their thing. Fernando, obviously valid. Koufax, valid. Jackie Robinson probably belongs on. There's too many faces for Mount Rushmore. Lasorda. Well, okay. I know some people that he's not near the Mount Rushmore for them. Jaime Jarrín, I think, deserves consideration for a lot of people. I mean, he's basically by many considered to be the Vin Scully of the Spanish speaking broadcast world as well. And so it's tough to like answer this question without putting a ton of caveats around. Well, for me, if we're talking guys I've seen, I didn't see Fernando pitch at his best. I obviously didn't see Koufax pitch at his best. So that's what makes it a tough conversation.
Yeah, I think trying to put one together like objectively is Kershaw, Scully, Jackie Robinson. I think those 3 like are probably on most. If you're trying to just do objective, like I didn't see them play obviously, but just looking at their talent, their importance, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the 4th one, is it Koufax? And give it
Koufax and Fernando, I feel like are the 2 that are there
in the discussion. Give it 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then Ohtani's going to argue, like going to be on that at some point. Like somebody's going to have to then come off. So yeah, it's a difficult conversation, but it's definitely a fun one because it's indicative of the rich history that the Dodgers have, and we've gotten to cover not all of them obviously, but some very talented players.
Dave Roberts, he creeping up your list here.
I mean, look, like
I know. I just say that because there's people in the chat that just had a freaking epileptic episode. I think
if he wins 2 more World Series, he's certainly like. It's not somebody that you could brush aside easily. If he somehow wins, not somehow, but if he were to win 3 more World Series before he retires, then he's definitely on it. I think at that point, I don't know how you could keep him off.
Yeah, let's do this. If we're doing players, then it's quote unquote easy because you can go Kershaw, Koufax, Fernando, and Jackie Robinson in no particular order. And I think you've probably pissed off the least number of people by just sticking with those four. Andrew Friedman, another nomination. Look, Andrew Friedman probably deserves some credit. There. Stockton says Franklin Stubbs and Cal Daniels belong on it. With all due respect to those two gentlemen. And sorry to people that I triggered by saying Dave Roberts. Okay. We had one other question. Larry said, do you think Cody Bellinger is similar to Adames as a hitter and a better fielder, solves the same problem? How do they compare with salary? Bellinger's under contract. He opted into a $27.5 million player option. So shout out to Cody Bellinger. But I do think the comp is a pretty good one. Like their profiles, they play different positions. But at his peak, Cody Bellinger was one of the best, if not the best defensive center fielder. Willie Adames at his peak, one of the best shortstops. Guys who strike out a lot, hit for some power, and it all kind of evens out to being like on the whole and a slightly above average to average offensive profile. So Adames will make less money. There's a reason Cody Bellinger opted into his $27.5 million salary. So I'll leave it at that. Go ahead.
I would think Adames is maybe a little bit more of a consistent hit, and it's just based on feel and watching Bellinger. Obviously, since he's been with the Cubs, I haven't watched him as much, but Bellinger got really inconsistent with the Dodgers, and it got pretty rough there. I would think Adames is maybe a little bit more consistent, but if not, then that's the idea. The idea of signing him to some of the contracts that are being floated around is concerning.
Jonathan says Jim Thome, Albert Pujols, Fred McGriff, Max Scherzer, and Ricky Henderson. It is funny when you talk about guys who just came at the end of their careers and where they stand. The Dodgers have had a run in the last 15 years of some legit Hall of Famers that just kind of filter through at the end. Although shout out to Albert Pujols for having a real meaningful contribution for at least part of his time here.
And Scherzer did until he didn't. And I'll bring it up the way that whole fiasco ended was unfortunate, obviously. But what Scherzer's start against in the Astros' first visit to Dodger Stadium with fans in attendance since the 2017 World Series cheating scandal, I was fortunately there to be covering it for us, was crazy. That was an environment, and Scherzer's performance. It was one of the best games that I've been to. Yeah,
and shout out to Kenny because Greg Maddux belongs on that list of all-time greats who made appearances with the Dodgers at the end of their category. Manny Ramirez. I mean, look, there's lots of these guys. Okay, there's lots of these guys that belong.
There's a reason. Yeah, there's a reason we do when the Hall of Fame ballot gets released every year. We write an article on that, and then we do former Dodgers on the Hall of Fame ballot, and it is always these guys who spent 1 or 2 years of their careers kind of at the tail end of the team.
I'm going to spare you all a round 2 of my Andrew Jones rant, but good Lord, that man belongs nowhere near the Hall of Fame. That's all I'm going to say.
Let it go. Let it go.
No, I'll never let it go. He was the 5th highest paid player in Major League Baseball, Matt. And he would have been the 3rd worst offensive player this year. Unbelievable. Okay, Stockton says Kike and Teo must return for clubhouse vibes alone. Agreed. And yes, no love, Zenji, for Frank McCourt, to answer your question. Okay, I know some people don't like the food conversations. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. I have to tell this story with Matt. On Friday night, I went to a high school football game. You a high school football guy? I love high school football games.
I used to be when I followed recruiting, college football recruiting a little bit more closely, and definitely look, I don't want to get on this. Players deserve to be paid, but NIL has changed, just what it's become. It's not as fun anymore because I feel like the recruiting aspect has been too impacted, so not as much.
Okay, well, I love high school football. It's late. There's a drive out there. My local school was playing in the semifinals, neutral site, about 45 minutes away. I'm cruising out by myself, and I'm hungry because it'd been an hour drive to get out there. Then I'm at the game. I didn't get anything at the concession. It was a great game. And then I'm coming home, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop for food. There happens to be a particular fast food joint that I will not name yet across the street. Ordered my favorite thing from this place and said, you know what? This item right here, I think is my favorite fast food burger from a national chain. Okay. So when I say national chain, we're not talking In-N-Out. We're not talking Whataburger, although that wouldn't be anywhere near the top 5. Shake Shack, none of that stuff. We're just talking, and Five Guys isn't fast food. We've had this conversation on this channel before. Okay. So fast food, we're talking like the McDonald's of the world. All right. So I said, wow, I would piss a lot of people off, I think, if I said this was my number one fast food burger. So I said, I'm going to save this, have not told Matt what my list is. And I wrote down my top 5. I'll go from 5 to 1 fast food burgers, Matt. And I want you to tell me how appalled you are by this list at the end. Okay. You'll be happy with one of the items. You won't be happy with where it lists. Okay. Number 5, mostly on vibes, reputation alone. I've got the Big Mac at number 5. I've been underwhelmed when I've had Big Macs lately. You could make a case that the quarter pounder with cheese is a better McDonald's burger, but just childhood nostalgia alone, Big Mac number 5. Okay. Number 4, surprising some people, the Dave's Double from Wendy's. Fantastic. Big Wendy's guy over here. I've got the Dave's Double number 4.
Can I stop you really quick?
Oh, go ahead.
I thought that was going to be number 1 because Wendy's is polarizing. So I thought that's where this was headed. So I'm really
intrigued Wendy's now. Is polarizing, my friend. Number 1, that's nothing on Wendy's. Okay, number 3, the Matthew Moreno special double Western bacon cheeseburger. Yeah. Number 3 on my list. Number 2, the Whopper. I like a good Whopper from I don't think Burger King's like my least favorite fast food place, but the Whopper as an item itself, number 2. Number 1, from Jack in the Box, sourdough Jack. The sourdough Jack from Jack in the Box is so good. I ordered it and I was like, oh my goodness, I had forgotten how fantastic this burger is. Up against any other fast food burger, Matt, give me the sourdough Jack. That's my answer.
That is actually good. I thought it was going to be one of their regular burgers. The sourdough Jack is good. I don't think it's number 1. Okay. I would put it off the top of my head in the top 5.
Okay.
I think for me, not that you asked for my list, but I'll try to put.
Somebody says Jack in the Box isn't national. I had no idea. I just assumed it was everywhere. Is it not everywhere? It's definitely up here.
Yeah, I assumed that it was as well. Okay. Yeah, I guess semi-national.
Okay. I mean, apologies if it's not national, but go ahead. Sorry.
For me, I'm probably putting the double Western first.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go back to your list. I would flip. I would drop the Whopper down.
Okay.
Sourdough Jack is definitely ahead of the Whopper, I think. So
if I were putting that, I thought this was going to be way more polar. I've got some people that think Jack in the Box doesn't deserve anywhere on the list, and I got a lot of people telling me they love the sourdough Jack. I feel like this is about right.
Yeah, the sourdough Jack is good. The rest of Jack in the Box burgers aren't great. I agree with you on the Big Mac. Like it is it's one of those things where if you kind of want a Big Mac and it sounds good, then you get it. But if you want a burger, like you don't think, oh, I'm going to go get a Big Mac to satisfy my burger craving. Yeah, no, I think that was a good list. Wendy's to me, Wendy's burgers, I don't think are good at all.
Love Wendy's. I'm a big Wendy's guy. That's probably my most common. I'm trying to eat a lot less fast food. Obviously, Friday night. It was the day before my birthday. I was by myself. I felt like I deserved it. So we got somebody saying 2,200 locations nationwide. It's a West Coast thing, I guess, like regionally, nationally, regional or something. So
I had no idea. I assumed they were on the East Coast as well.
Yeah. So there you go. Okay. Well, that wasn't as offensive as I thought it was. Zip code 0 just says Wendy's, all caps. Guessing that's a positive one. Stockton Slaps. What's your Taco Bell and your McDonald's order? Go for it. I'll let you go first.
McDonald's, I can do this one easy. Like I'll get some chicken nuggets and double cheeseburgers from there. Taco Bell, I'm not a huge fan. Like I have to be in the mood for it. The cheesy gordita crunch at Taco Bell is good.
Elite.
It's simple, but a cheesy roll up I like. I'll get it as a.
Is that just nacho cheese in a tortilla?
No, it's melted cheese, so it's not It's not nacho cheese. Okay. A crunch wrap every now and then, but yeah, and then like a bean and cheeseburger. I kind of rotate. Like I a lot of places, like if I try not to go to them, but when I do, like I kind of have like what I traditionally get, and I pretty much stick to that. Taco Bell is the one where it sort of fluctuates, just because I don't particularly love it, and so that one is sort of like, okay, what am I in the mood for this time?
Yeah, cheesy gordita crunch you mentioned, one of my favorite fast food items. We did a fast food draft a few years ago. Cheesy gordita crunch elite. I also love the beef supreme chalupa. Those would be my 2 top item choices. They've got like a box that's a cheesy gordita crunch, a beefy 5-layer burrito. That's a good combo, if you ask me. So that's that. McDonald's, I'm with you. That's what's funny is I like McDonald's, but when I thought about like what I order, I'm almost never ordering a Big Mac or a quarter pounder. It's usually like, give me a couple McDoubles and some French fries or something like that. Yeah. So there you go. And yeah, some people are asking, Matt, where the Double Del ranks in your top 5.
Yeah.
RIP though, right? Because it's been tweaked with.
I feel my taste buds told me, I don't know how many years we're at now, but maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I felt like they made some sort of change. I haven't been able to fully pinpoint it, but it did change. And so I don't know. Maybe I'll have to do some homework this week and see. I'll have to come back with you guys with my own top 5 and see if it's still in there. It might be sneaking in still at number 5, but off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, Zip Code 0 says the Mount Rushmore of fast food in Southern California: In-N-Out, Taco Bell, Habit, and anyone else. In-N-Out obviously is number 1 on this list for me. Who else? If you had 3 more fast food spots, who else makes this list?
I mean, I think Tommy's goes on there. I think it's iconic. Okay. It's good. Like it's like when you want chili cheese to meet, like you go to Tommy's. The Habit, I'm not considering fast food. I think Habit and Five Guys are their own,
Yeah, the Habit I don't think does drive-through, do they?
I mean, maybe they have some locations that do have it. Yeah, I feel like McDonald's are just like they're everywhere, so it's not like unique to Southern California by any means, but it's kind
Chick-fil-A make your list?
Yeah, I'll put Chick-fil-A on there.
Yeah, I think I'd have In-N-Out.
That's the healthy one.
The healthy one. In-N-Out, Chick-fil-A. If Tommy's counts, give me Tommy's, and I'd probably throw either Wendy's or Taco Bell in that 4th spot. Those would be like. I like Carl's too. I mean, Carl's is probably honorable mention. So somebody said you can get a Big Mac with quarter pounder patties, which I'm sure is like a $14 burger at that point, but that actually sounds good.
I did not know that.
So Stockton Slap says, I miss the enchilito from Taco Bell. Cholito is back. Yeah, they're doing the retro menu right now at Taco Bell. So the Mexi Melt was one of my go-tos as a kid. It's basically just ground beef, melted cheese, and pico de gallo. Fantastic. So you got options there. You've got options. But let's see. Del Taco is in the list for some people on their Mount Rushmore. El Pollo Loco. El Pollo Loco is a nice choice.
That's the other healthy one too.
Yeah. Habit is quick serve, Jason says. That's not fast food. It's drive-through, I feel like, is the only qualifier for fast food. If it has a drive-through, it qualifies as because we included like Panda Express on fast food when we did our debate, because it was like, where do you draw the line on these things? Technically, they have a drive-through. So yeah, there we go. If you want like just desserts, Dairy Queen could be mentioned there as well, just for blizzards alone.
See Deja Woos says Farmer Boys. That actually they're pretty good. I forget about them.
There you go. Stockton Slap says Jim Boy's Tacos underrated. I'm not familiar. Not familiar with your game.
Unfortunately, neither am I.
So there you go. So apologies to everyone. Wiener Schnitzel, common sense. I think I told this story. I was back in Southern California like 10 months ago, and the first night I had been traveling all day. It was a disaster of a day of travel. I finally get to the hotel. It's like 10:30 p.m. Everything's closed, or like in my hotel, like $40. So I'm just looking through DoorDash, and I see Wiener Schnitzel on there, and I'm just like, man, I could just, and it's like, it was so disappointing that every element of it was disappointing. And yet it was like, I needed to order it again. It's like nostalgia. I remember liking it as a kid. It didn't hold up. It shouldn't be DoorDashed in any way, shape, or form. But,
that was probably the biggest.
I'm pro Wiener Schnitzel.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like their chili cheese dogs are good.
Yeah. I think. Totally. There's some sandwich my dad used to always get, which is what I got. It's like rye bread with a cut in half hot dog and then like some cheese and mustard or something like that. Somebody knows. Are you an Arby's guy? People are asking about Arby's.
No, not at all.
Polish sandwich. Thank you.
Like a year ago, I saw, maybe even longer at this point, Arby's started offering it's not new anymore, but I saw a commercial for some new burger that actually looked good. And more recently, just the other day, I happened to see they're doing like some sort of turkey. I think 2 different like turkey sandwiches, and one of them looked kind of good. So
okay,
maybe I'll check it out. But I was, Wiener Schnitzel. I did see. You'll love this. They're serving meatball sandwiches now, and you could also get French fries with meatballs and marinara sauce and mozzarella cheese on top of it. So if you don't want chili cheese dogs, you could get your meatballs from Subway.
See, here's where I'm going to say, like, Arby's is what it is. Like, I'll respect them in this sense that they just decided that they weren't going to brand themselves as like a roast beef sandwich place, a beef sandwich place anymore. It was just going to be like, we do everything. We have the meats. And so it's every meat imaginable they do. Like, I kind of respect it because like their Wiener Schnitzel should be nowhere near meatballs. Like, nowhere near it. Like, I don't want McDonald's, doing something outside of the burger chicken sandwich. lane. Like if they were like, hey, we're doing meatball subs at McDonald's. It's like, why I don't like the whatever, the riblet sandwich or whatever they got. I'm just like, I'm not.
McRib.
Yeah, the McRib. I'm not here for the barbecue. I'd say the same about the fillet of fish. Like it's a hard pass for me in both counts. Just stay in your lane. Like I don't go to Carl's because I want a salad. I come here for a burger, chicken sandwich, nuggets, etc. Yeah, McDonald's, if they started serving pizza, no thanks. So yeah, I know. People think we're like the least healthy folks in the world. I promise you, I don't eat fast food all that often. And I need to do it less. So there you go. All right. I think on that note, we will end the show. Shout out to the 2,500 people in here live. Thank you. I do want to give one bit of information for all of you. Make sure this week you are following Dodger Blue 1958 on Twitter /X and on Instagram. Dodger Blue 1958 is the handle. We are going to be doing a giveaway on both of those sites. We've partnered up with Homage, who has given us 2 of the sweatshirts. I've got one right here. So hold on one sec. They've got these like World Series champion hoodies. You saw Daniel wearing it the other day. They're sweet. They're like long sleeve t-shirt, thin, but a little oversized with the hood on them. We're going to be giving away one of them on Instagram and one of them on social media. So follow both of those accounts and then stay tuned for details on how you're going to win those because they're awesome. Check out Homage's World Series gear. They've got a shirt. They've got a jacket, sweatshirt thing. I don't even know what you call it. It's a long, they call it a hoodie. I think it's like a long sleeve t-shirt with the hood. Very, very comfortable though. So make sure you're following on both of those accounts for details. And I see somebody asking about Blue Sky. We are on Blue Sky as well. Is it Dodger Blue 1958? Same handle, Matt?
Yes, same thing.
There you go. And I think all of our writers have made it over to Blue Sky. I have not quite figured out how to build it into my rhythm to actually post messages on there, but I do exist. I think it's the same at Jeff Spiegel, but I could be wrong. If you search Jeff Spiegel, you'll probably find me there. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. Again, stay tuned tomorrow morning. We got a fun interview that should be posting around 10 a.m. Check out DodgerBlue.com for all the latest news notes, write-ups from guys like Matt, Blake, Scott, Matt, Borelli, and others. We appreciate all them. And, of course, if you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, and Google as well. Matt, anything I'm missing before we send people home?
No, that was it. Just like you said, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Not only tonight, but just, throughout these off-season shows. I know at the rumors and stuff can get a little frustrating, but we're doing our best to sort of keep you guys up to date on what's happening, and then also trying to mix in some fun things here and there. And I know the food stuff, the burger thing went well tonight. I know sometimes people get a little upset with that, but I didn't see that in the comments tonight, so that was encouraging. And I saw David and a few others asking for a food podcast. We will do that maybe December-ish when stuff sort of slows down a little bit, or if we hit a lull here soon, maybe we'll try to squeeze that in.
Yeah, we do stuff like that, and it's like, look, if you don't like it, you could just click pass and thank you, and if you do like it, it's for you. So, all right, enjoy the rest of your night, folks. Again, thanks for joining us here on Dodger Heads. That is Matt. I am Jeff. Enjoy the rest of your night. Go Dodgers, and of course, still champs.